So I appreciate all of you guys being here. We've got Rich Demuro from KTLA here. He's Rich on Tech, at Rich on Tech on Twitter if you guys want to follow. We've got Jenifer Jolly from so many different outlets, but USA Today. Are you still doing Techish as well?
I am.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, but she is a contributor for Tech and Lifestyle for many, many outlets. We've got Milton Santiago. He's EBP man on YouTube. He does amazing reviews. We love working with him. And then, of course, Anthony Ha from TechCrunch, who's a senior writer there. And I think what we wanted to do today, we have been all day heads down in workshops with a lot of these people on PR, and we've just been schooling everybody, getting everybody prepped and primed. And we have some great questions on just how to work with the media. But I think you guys kind of started, and maybe I'll just go in the kind of order that we have up here. I think I've got Rich, Jenifer, Milton, and Anthony for these questions that we have. So we have a few questions laid out. And the first one is really, we've been talking about how COVID has affected our work life or how you work. What about, we would love to get some insight on how COVID has affected journalism and how you guys feel it's affected what you do as journalists and how you pick the stories. Has it affected it, or is it just a location thing for you guys at this point? Rich, if you don't mind starting us off, that would be awesome.
It 100% has affected everything from top to bottom, from how we pick the stories, how we shoot our stories. To talk about how to pick the stories, when COVID first started, I mean, I cover gadgets for a living, and how, I realized that you just couldn't do the same thing. How do you talk about these expensive things when nobody had a job, right? So that was the number one thing. And switch gears to okay, well, let's talk about tech related to the pandemic. And everything was for the first, 3 to 4 months was 100% COVID/tech. So whether it was phone soap for your phone, or, we just got creative with how to Zoom better, how to light your office better, work from home, best apps, best tools, anything. And so we did that for a while. And then there was kind of a little shift where we could get back into a little bit of normal coverage. And so I started, covering phones again and this and that. But of course, always keeping in mind, budgets and people that, were in a tough time, with their financial time and just everything, their life. And then shooting stuff and, basically I do everything from home. And I actually think it's been better because before, when I would shoot my segments at the studio at KTLA, I would have to bring everything in. So if I was doing a story about smart speakers, I'd have to bring in a Google speaker, an Amazon speaker, whatever, and link them up to the corporate Wi-Fi. It was always such a pain. And here I have everything I need to do every story in the world with tech. And so it's actually gotten a lot easier in some aspects to shoot our stuff. So that's been kind of fun. Although it's all in my house, which is, the downside.
Yeah, but we've got these awesome virtual backgrounds now that are suspect, but interesting. Nonetheless, what do you think, Jenifer? How has that changed? And then, I said COVID, but also COVID, the election, all this stuff that's going on. How has this changed the way you report?
COVID, Black Lives Matter, the election. I mean, it's kind of been just one dumpster fire to the next, really. And so I've worked from home forever. My home has been my studio forever. I happen to be married to a director of photography, so we have these just amazing lights. And I am doing this Zoom, not through a laptop, but through a ProRed camera. So I'm super lucky that way. So to Rich's point, and I know that we all kind of feel this way. So I was just getting back from Africa. I got back 2 days before the country locked down. So it was, what's it like to travel? What's it like? What are the health gadgets that we need? What are the Get Heal, the online companies that we can turn to when we have a sniffle? Mental health came out of the gate pretty strong in the early days of the pandemic, and ways to teach our kids from home. And this is all the stuff me and my friends were talking about anyway, and all of us were living with anyway. What's a mask that you can go run with? So it was really focused and centered around that, and that as we rolled into summer, how do we get the kids to summer camp online? all of these things. I feel like the first like sort of gadgety story, well, the first one I did that was all gadgets was taking a flight across country and back in May. So it was testing travel gadgets. But I feel like the first sort of big, almost back to normal time was Apple's iPhone announcements. I mean, that's when it kind of felt like now we're sort of back to a big announcement. Otherwise, it's been, what is there to solve a problem for me right now? And that's either with my trying to teach my kids at home in school, kids playing too many video games. It's just all about these very real life problems that we've had to solve and really been forced to solve through tech.
That's such a good point. Yeah, it's what are we doing every day? And that's what people are looking at too. I mean, I feel like aside from the health risks of COVID and like the scariness of all the news, like we as consumers, we're really like, okay, well, what can we use tomorrow to like get through the day? Because my kid can only be on the computer for 4 hours before their eyes start going like cross-eyed. So it's pretty intense.
And I think that, you know, really what problem can your client solve for me right now is a great way to you know, really think about this and and I'm sure we'll talk about that more later too. But
absolutely. Sure. Milton, so Milton, you've got like this different YouTube perspective.
Yeah.
I feel like we try to send you stuff all the time. How has that changed? How has that changed? Are you getting more stuff? Are you overwhelmed? Like how has your process changed?
Yeah. So it's interesting. There's a little bit of everything. So a couple of things. I'll just bring in some of my personal life and then kind of how it really influences the YouTube stuff. So one of the things that I think has happened, not only has it presented new challenges. So we're talking about all the challenges. We're talking about education. We're talking about work from life or work-life balance at home and the hours. But what it's also done is it's transformed the way a lot of industries do business. So I'll give you an example. My wife is a realtor. You can't show homes. She couldn't show homes. So now what does that mean for that industry? So I found myself getting tapped and asked, you know, what kind of camera do I need? What kind of audio do I need? Why isn't anyone, how do I reach my clients? And in Chicago, the housing market's still booming. We're talking homes don't last 24 hours and they're sold, even during this time. So there's enormous opportunity, but there's a change in how people do business. And it's interesting how I found a lot of business professionals asking, how do I do things virtually, right? Not just the Zoom, but how do I communicate virtually? How do I attract my clients? How do I communicate with my clients? How do I satisfy those needs still virtually? So virtual tours, educating folks on how to use YouTube, how to use Instagram. Spent quite a bit of time doing things that were part of my comfort zone, but outside of my industry from a comfort zone. So learned a lot about the real estate industry that applied so much to what we do digitally. Now, just like Jenifer, you know, I have audio, I have lighting. So that wasn't a challenge for me switching. But what was a challenge was the fact that there was a delay in access to technology. So I don't know if you all experienced where because of the manufacturing crisis, because this was not just a health crisis, a mental crisis, a family crisis, but it also became a manufacturing crisis. And, you know, when you think about, I think this has been the biggest Techtober, Tech November, Tech December, like literally, I can't keep up because manufacturers basically were so delayed in their lines of production. And then all of a sudden things became available and they want to get their product out to the market. And that's created challenges. Not only that, but for the first time ever, I saw products that were launched or embargoed products that then were put on hold because of manufacturing, not because there was a problem with the product, but because of manufacturing delays. So just saw a total different year from years past.
That is amazing. That's a very good point. And I've actually seen that obviously straight up with our clients. It's like a hurry up and wait situation and they don't even know, nobody's communicating properly. So I think that's the other problem. A lot of people are shipping overseas and it's caused, a lot of conflict. So that's an awesome insight. I really appreciate that view. Anthony, you're a media reporter. Obviously you report on lots of different things, but what does your perspective look like?
Well, I think that TechCrunch compared to maybe a lot of other publications and outlets shifted or, you know, started to do a lot of non-COVID coverage relatively quickly. Partly it's just because, you know, we're publishing 30 or 40 posts a day. And so, and the kinds of news that we cover continued, startup fundings continued, launches continued, all these things. I mean, there are certainly weeks like when the Black Lives Matters protests really kind of got going where there's an element of just like, I don't think anyone cares about your startup this week. Sorry. But that at the same time, fairly quickly, we kind of get back to it. And so you can go to TechCrunch on a given day. And I think a lot of times you'd be like, oh, right, is there a pandemic going on? And then, when we talk to a company, certainly we want to get a sense of what the past year has been like for them. And it always plays a role because it has affected everything. So it'd be insane to have a conversation where you didn't acknowledge that. But I think in terms of the kinds of things we're covering, I think it actually hasn't made maybe as dramatic a difference in the day-to-day as it has for perhaps some other folks. And I think what we're also thinking about more now is this question of there are all these big transformations that happened this year. The fact that we're doing this event over Zoom. And so then the question becomes, what does 2021 look like? What does 2022 look like? How many of these things stick around? And how many of these things, once, knock on wood, the vaccine gets approved by the FDA tonight, and we start to return to normalcy throughout the year, what are the things that are going to stick, and what are the things where actually it turns out we liked the way it was before?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I also want to thank you so much. I think these are all really good questions. I want to cover as much as I can today. If you guys have any questions as far as attendees, please pop them in the Q&A. That's an easier way for me to manage the Q&A so I can kind of get those questions answered. We have a slew of questions to start with. And, all of you kind of like touched on what's going to happen in the new year. So I really wanted to start, and you guys kind of talked about this in the waiting room. I really want to talk about, and this is maybe personal, and I'm hosting, so I get to ask the question, but CES, like what, it's just craziness. It's, you guys were talking about virtual meetings. Milton had asked the question and presented it of, what are we thinking about? What's going to go on at CES this year? And it's first of all, the second week of January. Why couldn't they normally do that? And then secondly, secondly, like what does that look like for you guys? How are your schedules piling up? And how are you guys managing that? Is this is CES a month-long thing, or is it still like 5 days? I'll start with Rich.
I'm sort of taking a wait and see approach right now because, I think that a lot of it is still, unclear to me. So I think that, there will be announcements. There's still going to be CES. I mean, my favorite part of CES is walking through the floor and seeing all these amazing things that literally feed my report for an entire year. And not just that, but it helps me form a basis of comparison for things like, oh, I saw this company doing this. You see the trends that are happening. You see that, so that part will be lost. But at the same time, I think it will just be different. And it will be, like everything else this year, the show will go on, but it will be different. And, companies will still have a chance. I'm curious to see how things bubble up. Because like at CES, there's always things I call they bubble up. They become like the popular thing there and everyone wants to see it. And so I'm just curious how it's going to all work. And I don't really know at this point, but I've got it on my calendar. I'm ready to go. And, or I should say ready to stay. But, it's on my calendar. So I'm still, the meetings and the emails are starting to trickle in. And I'm just taking it day by day to see kind of like when I form my coverage plan.
Thank you. Jenifer, what do you think? What does it look like? Do you guys have anything on your calendar yet?
I do. My calendar is pretty full already. I have 2 satellite media tours. I'm hosting Last Gadget Standing, and I believe that's full, like really crazy full. And I was supposed to be hosting Last Gadget Standing from the main stage in Redmond at Microsoft's campus in Redmond. Just found out today because of some late breaking COVID concerns, I won't be able to host from there. So I will be on at my aunt and uncle's farm on Whidbey Island in the Puget Sound. It's going to be really interesting to figure out how all that's going to work. But yeah, I'm always looking for the things that we will all be talking about. I'm always looking for the wacky gadgets. Plus, I'm sure we're all always looking for the trends. Is it going to be the thinnest TV screen? Will it be the smartest new home vacuum? Whatever it is, we're all kind of looking for that. And I know this year health will be bigger than it's ever been. And I'm excited for it because even though unlike Anthony, everything. It touches every bit of the popular culture that we're dealing with today. Did I just?
Yeah, we lost you for a second there.
You're back. You're back.
So many important things. Dang.
It's weird. It's weird because the screen behind you started to glitch first. So there's definitely some sort of internet issue. It was like I was like watching like the meltdown happen. It was kind of cool.
The Matrix. It was the Matrix.
And we have, as I talked about, like the under. You know what's funny? We're wired in. We have like the best, fastest internet we can possibly have. There's a little bit of a.
But this is real life, right? That's what everybody faces.
Yeah. Well, and I am so excited, you guys. I am so personally excited not to go into the germ bucket that is CES this year, because I'm sure we all had COVID from CES last year. So.
Yeah.
My goal at CES every year is to not get sick, because I did get sick like one year. This was like probably almost a decade ago.
For sure.
And now when I go in there, I'm like like at a crime scene. I've got like, my sanitizer, like right after someone, does, okay, thank you. Let me see that. And then I'm like picking things up and I'm like, okay.
We'll be wearing masks forever. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, it's been okay for the last couple of years for me.
Milton, you were mentioning that you're doing some virtual events. So how is that looking? How is that looking for you?
Yeah, and I think it's great. One thing I wanted to just touch on, a couple of things that Rich and Jenifer mentioned is I agree with Rich wholeheartedly that, really the benefit of CES is it's like, I feel like I'm a squirrel running through the entire convention, gathering all these nuts that are the things that are, and not crazy people, there's nuts there too, but I'm talking about truly the nuts that are associated with the next gadget. But you know what I think is missing, and this is what this pandemic has, I think, impacted all of us, and that is the relationships. For me, CES is about relationship building. It's about meeting with the vendors, meeting with the suppliers, going down Eureka Row and meeting with the up and coming startups, is spending time and just getting to experience that. And I agree, I'm popping my vitamin C as we're going through, making sure that we have the little bottles connected to our backpacks for our sanitizers. But I think that that's going to be the biggest loss, because we're going to be able to see, we'll be able to have the conversation, but there's something to say about just human interaction that is face to face. The smiles that you get when you're in person, it's just going to be a loss. As far as, my experience so far, I've been participating in several virtual sessions. They've worked well. But I don't think that while it's been productive, and I think we're getting more used to this virtual thing, there's still, I think, that a lot that's lost. I think we're going to understand the technology. I think we're going to be able to get access to them. I think we're going to be able to show them. But I think that we miss a lot of the storytelling that comes from just being face to face. For me, that's the biggest loss, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're missing a lot of stories that we want to tell. We're working with some automotive tech companies, and for that company in particular, it's kind of crazy because automotive tech, you have to see in person, you have to kind of experience it. I mean, how are you going to experience that properly virtually? I mean, we're going to figure it out, but it's very challenging. Anthony, what do you think? How are you? Is this a welcome change for you? Are you happy to not go? Or are you happy to go?
It's always a mix for me. I mean, my birthday is January 6th, so there's always a little bit of regret that I can't do my birthday with my friends, but then I get to do it with my work friends, so that works out okay. And I will definitely miss going to the Peppermill, the greatest terrible diner in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
But I would echo a lot of what other folks have said, that and again, part of this is that I'm the media and advertising reporter, so I help out with CES, but CES is not the absolute insane 24/7 race that it is for our more hardware focused reporters. So I think they've probably got a much fuller schedule than I do, but I'm very much, hey, tell me what you need. I'm gonna, keep an eye on things, try to, like everyone else, figure out what the big trends are. And I think I agree that the thing I'm going to miss the most is the face-to-face interactions. I would say second is the serendipity, that feeling of just, hey, here are the meetings I've scheduled, here are the things that I'm supposed to do, but also just wandering around and seeing what is on the floor. That's what I'm also going to miss.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you guys echo something. I mean, I talked to a few other people. I talked to Mashable, Gizmodo last week, and I asked them the same question, and everyone's saying the same thing. Like, you guys are a little bit more optimistic. You guys are missing the hubbub of the show, but everyone's really mostly missing the interaction, that meeting their colleagues or seeing some of this and holding this stuff face to face, even though it's a big shit show. I think everyone it's like that thing that you love to hate,
It's also social media gold. I mean, the videos that I get and the pictures that I get to, share on social media from CES is just wild. So, I mean, it literally, I parse it out for 3 or 4 weeks after, and not just that, but B-roll, when I'm, needing a shot of something, I can look at my Google Photos and be like, oh yeah, I have a shot of a drone or a shot of this that I can use for our piece, So, I mean, there's just so many things that I know everyone hates on CES, but it is kind of the thing that people love to hate. I've always been optimistic, except for that one year I got really sick, but I love it. I think it's really fun. It's right here. It's a good drive to Las Vegas for me. And, I enjoy it for the most part. Except for the 12 days I had to stay one time when I worked at CNET. That was a little bit much.
Oh my God.
That was a long stretch.
Yeah. So I have a question from the audience, and I don't know if you guys can, I think I can see it. I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but this is like an ancillary question. So one of our guests here, he's been in the summit all day. He's he has his own company. But one of his questions is, how does he help others in his market or industry showcase their stuff? So how can he interact with you guys or reporters to help them? In a lot of these companies are startups. So mind you, these are small companies that maybe aren't well known, maybe don't have a lot of funding. What are the best ways to kind of reach out to your group and showcase companies that don't have a lot of financial oomph, but do have, something to kind of expand the market, and they do have some innovation happening. And I
can share something.
Please, that would be great.
So right now I don't want to call it working, but I am in conversation with several startups. And I have been having conversations with these startups. We're talking from paper models all the way up to 3D printed models to I'm seeing internals. And this was they literally reached out and just said, hey, we'd like to have your perspective on X specific product line. And we're working on this product line. And I think that it's establishing that networking relationship, just reaching out and being very candid. So this is a 2-person startup, one of the ones that I'm working with, and they have a great idea that solves a real problem that we all face every single day. And I think for those of you who have spoken to me in the past, I'm a believer in giving. I believe that you give and you receive. So I give freely. So if someone asks me, I'll share with my experiences. I'll give you product enhancements. I'm not asking for anything in return, but I'm just going to give you my overall experience. And those relationships have been very rewarding. And there's several products that are coming down the pipe that will, go to a Indiegogo or Kickstarter ultimately. And I see a lot of things that don't even make it to Kickstarter or Indiegogo because of, there'd been a change in design or change in process. But it's been about reaching out. I personally have my profile information is available either on LinkedIn. So people can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok. We're trying TikTok too. And you can find us on YouTube. And I think reaching out and just having that candid conversation. And we've talked about not just product enhancements, but we've talked about marketing opportunities. Like, how do I market myself? How do I communicate the value? And, you know, and I've also shared some of the successes and some of the not so successful launches and the things that even some of the larger brands haven't done. Right. So it's really about having that interaction and that social connection. And there's so many ways to do it. I would say just reach out. Just reach out.
We talked a lot today about personalizing your emails and personalizing, obviously, your outreach. So I mean, that's lending kind of authenticity is lending to what you're saying, of course.
Yeah.
And I think you have a different position. You're on YouTube. You have like a special carved out market. You're in this gadget space. So I feel like you have a very unique position. And that's kind of why I selected each one of you. You guys have a very different positioning, all of you. So same question really for Rich, like how, from a local broadcast perspective, and I know you do a lot of other things as well, like, how does an unknown company get some attention? What kind of moves should they be making to get that attention, I guess, is the question.
There's only one way, just email. I mean, that's how it works. I mean, it's, I read every email that I get. I read every pitch. I may not read the whole thing. I mean, a lot of things are just a swipe to the right on my phone. If I read the 2 lines that they give you as a preview and I'm like, this is not for me. And, sometimes I'm wrong. And I've told people, like, sometimes, here's the thing about all PR people. They email you first. And if you don't respond, they email you right away again. And you're like, okay, well, in my mind, I've taken care of that already. But now I have to deal with it again because they don't know that I passed on it, right, in my head. So without like literally responding to every email and saying like, sorry, this is not a fit or whatever. And by the way, not everything happens on your timeline. So, sometimes I will star an email or remember something or put it as part of like, okay, this is a good app to put as part of like a roundup, and I'll look for 3 other apps that are similar and I'll start a list. So, I mean, there's methods to my madness that not everyone knows. And but again, it all starts with reaching out. And, I get messages through Twitter, I get messages through Instagram, I get messages through LinkedIn. But honestly, the only one that really matters is email, because my inbox is sort of my to-do list. And if it gets there, I will look at it. Instagram, I'm looking at it all day long. I see a message, I go, oh, that's interesting. And I forget about it 1 second later when I click to something else. Same thing with Twitter, same thing with LinkedIn. I mean, I don't think I've ever responded to a message on LinkedIn. It's just not like a part of my workflow, Yeah. And so, and everyone's different, but for me, it's like email, and every single company has the same exact opportunity. I don't care if you're $1 million company or one person, I'll read your email, and that's the bottom line.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Jenifer.
Same. Do not call me. Don't ever call me unless you're my friend. And I know people have been told today to call reporters and you've got to get on. If you call me, I might kill you. You call me during dinner. I'm too busy. I'm on deadline. And every time that phone rings, that gets me out of this horrible, awful deadline that I'm usually a day late on already. So I hate phone calls. I also hate if I say, hey, it's not a fit right now. Like if I take the time to respond, why? Oh my God. Yeah. Because I get 1,000 pitches a day. So I'm going to tell you a secret right now. Every single person who writes pitches to reporters like me, know what I do and what I cover. I am a consumer tech reporter. Amen. I don't cover launches of products. I don't cover launches of, unless it's an Apple product or unless it's like a product. Also, know what an exclusive is. Telling me you're pitching me an exclusive, but pitching 300 other people the same exclusive is not an exclusive. I hate embargoes. We all hate embargoes. I only want the embargo that I get to break before everybody else. And yes, for the love of God, we all honor embargoes. Don't pitch me 20 times to say, will you honor an embargo? Because I am done with you by then. Okay. Put in the subject line what you think the headline of that story should be. I get two to 5 good pitches a year. 2 to 5 good pitches a year. You know who's good at pitching? Former news reporters. Yeah. So Stop thinking so much about your client and forcing your client on me, and think about my audience and why your client's story needs to get in front of my audience. And then like Rondinio texts me, because we're friends now. Like all my, there's about 10 PR people. I will pick up a text in the middle of the night, no matter what.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Because we work together. And when I need something, I go to you and say, the Today Show wants this segment. They want it tomorrow. They want every item to be under $100, and they want it available on Amazon. And Mayor, you know who you are. You'll do it no matter what. And you won't come back and say, oh, the client wants this or that, or this link changed to this different picture. It's like, guys, we're going to work together. I've been doing this, God, 27 years? How is that even possible? But it was since I'm only 27 years old, but that's true. We're going to be working together for a long time. I know what it's like to have to deal with those clients who have really, really insane expectations of you. But I promise you, if you work with me, we work together. I know the next 15 stories I'm going to do. Let's figure out a way to work your client into that versus the other way around.
I love it. I love it. Actually, you echoed so much of what we talked about today. So I really appreciate that. It's so awesome.
Don't call me.
Yeah.
Unless we're friends.
Milton, what do you think? You kind of touched it.
It's like I don't want to be redundant, but I have to agree with everything that's been said. I get lots of pitches. I think as someone who's looking to a pitch, be concise. You want to be concise, be specific to the channel, or in my case, I get so many questions about baby strollers and other gadgets that have nothing to do with what I do. And frankly, I used to, when I first started, I would try to be respectful and reply. And like Rich right now, I swipe. I just can't. And you don't know how many times I get the same one. And then it's again, the whole thing about the embargo. I agree with that. And also timing. Sometimes you do have, I work in FIFO model, first in, first out, right? So for me, it's about all the gadgets coming in, and I try to be respectful to I have some well-established relationships. If those well-established relationships, because we do so much together, say, hey, can you bring this up? I need this by this day. Absolutely, because you have that relationship. But it really comes down to, if you were to want to pitch to an angel investor, you're looking to pitch to a VC, you have it locked down, and you know exactly what you want to say, and you know what your pitch is going to be, and you need to make sure that you only have one time to get that email out, and that's your pitch. Make sure that you have it locked. That's it.
That's great. That's so great. Anthony, you have a little bit of a different perspective. I love it. What about you? How is it going for you? And what is the way to get a little bit less, like maybe someone who doesn't have $10 million, on your radar,
I guess, first of all, I agree with everything that everyone said, but especially what Jenifer said during her epic answer. Don't call me. I do not like that. I would say that, and I think we have some people on this who are not necessarily PR pros, but are entrepreneurs and hoping to do outreach themselves. And I think, I think this applies to both, is that what can be really hard, but is often the most important thing, is to kind of step outside of yourself and your perspective for a little bit, because I get so many pitches that it would be so great for me if you wrote about this. This would mean, and I'm not a monster. That I do feel that, but that is not a story. What you need to think about is, what is the story that I'm going to tell that would be interesting, whether that's about your company, whether it's about the broader industry that you're in. You need to figure out what is the story that you would read or watch, and imagine it on TechCrunch, imagine it on TV, imagine seeing it in the newspaper, because I think most of the time, if you were being honest with yourself, you're like, I would never read a story like this. This is incredibly boring. Not because your company is boring, but just the fact that you're like, hey, we're, a few people in a garage making something that we're excited about. That's exciting to you, but then what is it that makes it interesting to a broader audience? That's part of our job, is to tell that story when there is an interesting story, but in order to get our attention, you have to convince us there's an interesting story there.
Oh, yeah. That's totally reasonable. Don't worry. So I have a few, these questions kind of have been ranging. So one of the questions, and this is based on kind of your last answer. Obviously, no one's calling you guys, so don't worry. But one question was, you must get thousands of messages a day, and that's very much true. I wouldn't say, I mean, hundreds, thousands. So are you guys more likely to respond? And I kind of want to say yes already, but if the question comes from someone you know, or if the client is referred by somebody that you know, and I'm gonna have to say yes, but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because,
although that said, beware of, I think there are a lot of people who will be like, oh yeah, I'm best friends with Rich. I'm best friends with Jenifer. And then, you know, that may not always turn out to be the case too. I don't really have a good test for sussing that out, but be aware that not everyone who says that they're on great terms with us actually is.
Oh, gotcha.
Well, and this is one of the things that I get that really is tough. Okay. So I get the emails that start, Rich, I love you on TV. I love your segment. I love what you did with this, that. And then here comes the pitch. And of course it tugs at my heartstrings. So I'm like, oh, this person likes, but no, they're just literally like doing their job and like saying like, okay, so you watched me on TV once and you watched one web piece and now you like write about it. And it's like in your email, and I'm as a human being trying to navigate that. Because of course I like to reward someone who is, watching me and interacting and knows and is familiar with me versus someone who's just, kind of coming in cold with a B2B pitch. And I'm like, I don't even cover that. Like what, I don't even know what this is. Like I'm on some sort of list that you found. So it's tough. I mean, people try all kinds of things. And yes, I will say that, look, we are all human. Relationships are the biggest thing we have. And of course, if you see an email from a PR person that you did a stellar story with in the past, you are going to look at their email quicker and with a little bit more intensity than another email from someone that you don't know. And that's not to say that that person's email is going to be lost. Sometimes it is for me. Like I'm, I make mistakes and I miss things. And I'm, sometimes it's really nice that PR people are on top of it and email me 3 times, because I've had stories on the 4th or 5th time where it finally clicks. And I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And they're like, well, I've emailed you like 16 times. I look at my trash and like, sure enough, every one of their emails is in there. So, I mean, it happens, I mean, we're all just kind of, doing our thing and we're not perfect. Yeah. So, I don't think there's one necessary method, but yes, to answer your question, when we know someone and they say that, or if they come to us with another gadget or another story, of course we consider it closely.
Good.
Yeah. I have a near photographic memory, so I will remember a pitch from 3 years ago, and when it comes time to that'll actually fit into a story, I remember it and I go search my inbox. Like I never get rid of a single email because I can go back almost 10 years and find contacts and stories. And so exactly what everybody else said is really, really true. It might not be a fit today, but it might be a fit a year from now. Also, if you want me to cover a gadget, you have to get that gadget into my hands. Contractually, I don't cover press releases. I don't cover gadget launches because they all look good on paper. Those awesome promo Indiegogo videos look great, Kickstarter videos. And then I get the gadget and it's a pile of crap. So I have to have it. If you get it to me, there's a really good chance I'll cover it. And if you send a prepaid label with it, I will send it back to you no matter what. And every once in a while we lose one of those labels, but not very often. And I have gadgets here I'm begging people to send me a label for so I can get it back. But have patience. I understand your clients like, where's the coverage? Where's the coverage? Where's the coverage? And that's I'm happy to get on the phone with them and explain how news works, but news is
yes,
new.
You can't, the where's the coverage thing is so frustrating because like you said, I may have a gadget here that has been sitting here for 6 months to a year and it just has not been the right time. But again, like you said, if it's here, it could be part of a roundup. And that's, so begging me and asking like, hey, did you get a chance? Did you get a chance? Like it will happen when it happens, It's not like I've forgotten about the stuff that I have like ready to go that I'm sort of actively considering.
Solve a problem. So gadget, like stuff that solves problems almost always gets covered. Look at what we're all talking about, what's making headlines, and relate it to that. That's really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are giving such great advice on like really talking about the real things. And I think maybe you're right, in the excitement of starting a new startup, in the excitement of creating your own products, because most of these people are startup entrepreneurs and founders. it does, your story becomes like bigger in your head than it really is on paper. So getting a little bit of perspective, and some of the recommendations we've said is like email a friend and ask them, do they think it's interesting? You know, would you open your own email? Email yourself. Like, would you even open it? So we're kind of trying to get people to kind of get that perspective. And I really appreciate, like, this is so great to hear where you guys are coming from, because I think a lot of people will need to know this information. Now, these are our attendees here, but also in the future when we post this up. We have a question. Should be a funny one. What's the worst pitch you've ever been pitched? And I'm sure you guys remember this stuff. So, Rich.
Oh, I mean, for some reason, I'm on some sort of like YouTube, promotion Amazon thing that I just get a pitch every day from someone. Like, I don't do promotions. Like, I don't do, I work for a company and I get paid by them. I don't, review gadgets and get paid to do that. So I get all these things that, like, do you want to promote our gadget and Amazon? And so it's not bad pitches per se. I mean, I don't in my head, like, sit there and think like, what a bad pitch, like, cause it's not, I don't really think even that it's a pitch. It's just like an email that I'm getting that, like, okay, this could be interesting. Cause I don't, by the way, do all my stories from pitches. Like, a lot of my stuff I'm like coming up with, and I'm, actively looking for things. Like, I'm doing a segment on Monday about, like, money saving websites. And it was actually a viewer that emailed me the first website. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let me see if there's any more of those types of websites. And sure enough, there was. And so, anyway, but the bad pitches, I don't get bad pitches. I just get a bunch of bad emails of, like, just misdirected. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, this is not for me. And it just wastes my time, but I get it. I'm on lists. Your email gets on 1 million lists, and that's really what's happening. It's not a person maybe it is sometimes. I don't know.
Jenifer.
I mean, I just am getting a update, please. Hi, can we get Jenifer to update a link and take readers to our product directly? No. No, you can't. I'm sorry. No, I'm not, you don't pay me. You don't, like, it just kind of blows my mind how some PR people and companies think that I work for free most of the time anyway. Like, I am not here to just be, the extension. You're getting paid. I'm not. So remember that. And I have so many things like don't pitch me a gadget and then make me go hunting for the information. I don't cover press releases. I don't cover launches of companies unless it's going to change my life in some significant way, and the 2 billion people who go eyeballs on with my content every month. Like, it has to touch us. It's always the what's in it for me, and I think that's the biggest. And have it be easy. Send me everything in one place, put a picture with it, put the links with it, put the picture you want in the article, because if I'm going to go hunting for them, it might not be a picture you want. And guess what? I don't care.
No, that's a big one. That's actually like supporting materials, like pictures, like high-res pictures and B-roll especially, is like, I just don't understand why it's not included in every email, like at the bottom, right? Like, just, hey, here's some B-roll and here's some pictures. Like, I have to email. And it's like big companies, like a large tech company will email like a whole thing, and I have to be like, oh, and do you have any pictures? Like, oh yeah, sure, let me get those. And it's like another hour, and then you get them, and it's like, why wasn't this just included? Like,
be in the signature.
Just like
the B-roll is huge too. I mean, we have to shoot B-roll all the time, and like, really, if you're a big company, you should know how to do B-roll, and you should know that I do video, and that has to be in every story. Like, that, you got to know that stuff. And I'm happy to help, but I send a lot of emails back that say, can you say this like you would explain it to your mom? Because I don't understand a single word you said, and if I'm nice enough to say, like,
every day.
Right?
Yeah. Every day I'm writing emails back and go, okay, let me get this straight. So it's a device that you plug into the wall, and then you can plug other devices into it. And they're like, yes. I'm like, okay, why did it take 17,000 letters for you to write that? And I just wrote it in 2 lines. And they're like, yeah, that's it. I'm like, okay, that's.
You know what I think sometimes is lost, especially and this could be, an agency can do this as well as an individual can do this, is that I find that at times that we forget that while you're representing a brand and you're also, or you want to represent yourself, you forget that the person who is looking at your product, the person who is presenting your product also has their own brand. And there's credibility that comes with each one of us. And it's really important that whatever gets provided represent not just your product well, but our personal brand. And I have had to turn down lots of things because it just didn't present my brand well. And that comes down to B-roll. It came down to content. Even sometimes things could be misleading, right? You know, how many times have you heard the smallest in the world, the lightest in the world, the most powerful in the world, or the quietest in the world? And it really isn't. And it becomes a challenge, especially when, you know, I've had, and I stay away from this, any brand that gives me talking points and wants verbatim, you know, could you make sure you say this? I won't. It needs to come from me. It needs to be authentic.
I love that. Anthony, what do you think?
I think that probably there's a lot of terrible pitches that I've, you know, blissfully just completely blanked out on. I will say that one specific category that I find very annoying is emails. They're less pitches per se, but they're emails that tie into something that I wrote years ago, or that sometimes something that someone else at TechCrunch wrote years ago, that they're like, correction, this company now does this other thing. And I'm like, well, yeah, but they did the thing I said when I wrote about them 3 years ago. Don't ask me to, I'm not going to go back and make sure that something I wrote in 2012 is fully up to date. And often it's for SEO reasons too, which is the worst, is when they're like, hey, for SEO reasons, please add this link. Or one time somebody said, please remove this link because you linked to a negative article about us and that's really helped the Google juice of that article. Please remove it. And yeah, we are not an arm of your SEO team, which to reiterate. Yeah. And in general, I would say that if it's something that's urgent enough to like use puts correction in the subject line, then it better be a recent story and not something that ran years ago.
And like an actual correction. Like I've gotten requests for like companies to put like those like tracking codes in the link, like a UTM, whatever they, you know, whatever. I'm not an SEO person, but like, you know, it's like not an affiliate code, but like literally like a tracking, like, so they can see how many people saw my story. And I'm like, that's not my job as a news organization. You track your own story and you can figure it out. I'm not putting, you know, or they say, well, you link to this part of our website and we'd rather have you link to this part. I'm like, well, I link to the best part for my reader or my viewer that's coming to the website for more information. Like, I know that you want to promote this, but like, if it's a correction, I'm fine. And believe me, people email corrections like, oh, you spelled this wrong, or you know, said this guy's name wrong, whatever. Like, that's fine. But like when it's these little nuanced things that like, it's just, come on.
So that's a relief because we hate doing it too.
I'm sure.
We're doing it too. So I appreciate you guys have spent so much time giving us such great insights and being so transparent. I love all of your energy. You guys are so awesome. I want to like just ask you guys a personal question. What is your favorite tech and stories right now? I'd love to just like get a little bit of an understanding of like, what are you guys following? Jenifer, you had mentioned, you know, you're really following things that apply to your life every day, which totally makes sense. What other stories are triggering you? And maybe not just from like things that you're reporting on, but things that you're loving to like learn more about. Where are you guys following? Where are you following the news? And I'm going to start with you, Jenifer, since I called you out.
I follow it like literally everywhere. I mean, I start my day, I don't even get out of bed and I read all of the headlines and I read Rich's stuff, I read TechCrunch stuff, I read Mashable stuff, I read CNN. I mean, I start my day and I pretty much read most of my news and social media. And, you know, I would say I spend an hour at the beginning of the day just catching up with everything. And one of the hardest parts of my world is I don't have a specific beat, and sometimes I'm way too spread out. I mean, I do, like, I write a lot right now about travel tech, about health and fitness tech. I'm writing a lot about video gaming, kids and families, and the struggles that many kids are having needing to play more video games and be on video games, even getting it assigned as homework, and their parents not understanding and taking their tech away. Like it's things like that. So Also, if there is a new product, new company, new startup, why? I just keep going back to what problem does it solve? So that's what I'm working on. I really have not seen like kind of that, this is what everybody will be talking about about CES yet.
Yeah.
So pitch that to me right away. And why? I mean, the weird stuff is always the best, but you might have to get it to me here in my home studio. And guess what? I've tested tech forever. So I know how to test tech. I don't have to be on a Zoom call with you to do it the first time. If I do, I promise I'll let you know that I do. And I'm not going to bag on it just because I can't figure it out. But if I can't figure it out, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember one thing I made a little, it's like I still write in pen. I made a little note. Another just annoying thing, you might be new at the job, but we're not. We've all been doing this a long time. So it's frustrating to us when companies hire PR agencies, like a lot of turnover. And when there's a newbie PR person who comes in like a, pit bull and a whatever the saying is, comes in just ready to tell us how to do our jobs. It's yeah, and it happens a lot. And I can think of a couple companies that have switched PR firms so much, or there's a new person on the account and it's starting over again every time for us. And that's really frustrating too.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I didn't answer your question.
No,
hopefully that's helpful.
You're answering other questions, so that's great. Rich, how about you? What are you following? What are you interested in right now? Especially from a local perspective. I mean, you do national stuff too, right? So like, but from both a local and national perspective, what are you doing?
That's actually an interesting point with my segment, because we do syndicated segments for all of our stations for like 3 days a week. And then I do local stuff 2 days a week. And so that's also interesting, because I'll get a lot of like LA heavy pitches. And I'm like, it's really tough because my main segment, my big segments are syndicated. So we need stuff that does apply to everyone everywhere. And I've gotten creative with ways of taking a small thing that happens in LA to like, a nationwide thing. But I actually don't like technology. I just cover it for the news and I really don't like it at all. I live in a house with none of it. And no, I'm just kidding. I'm obsessed with tech. I love technology. I literally, and it's funny because I'm watching this trend in technology, especially with like the privacy stuff. And there's a much more critical, like that is what the mainstream media is much more latching onto these days. Except for Apple, they seem to get all the play no matter what. They can't do any wrong. But, with like Google, Amazon, Ring, all these big companies, it's always like, are they evil? Facebook. And I've always taken sort of because I'm a consumer tech reporter, I've always taken sort of a positive aspect to things. And now it's increasingly challenging, with like, especially on Facebook, like I'll post like a new feature and people will be like, how dare, like these companies are evil and we don't believe them. And this is, like, it's getting really odd, like I've seen that shift. So I personally love gadgets. I love when things do really cool stuff. I'm obsessed with mobile phones. And I just love finding cool new things that I can share with the audience and hoping that they like it too, And when I see that feedback, that's kind of like, not what I thought it was going to be, it does surprise me sometimes. And I'm seeing it more and more, especially with Facebook and not so much Instagram, but Facebook especially.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that goes, right? That shakedown, how that turns out. Milton, so I have the same question for you, obviously. What's interesting to you? And you have a really specific niche, but also we have a question. How did you get your room lit so nicely?
It's Edison lights, and it's just again they're hues. So I kind of like the sunrise effect. This is the place where I work, and I want to just have, when you think about it, everyone loves sunsets, everyone loves sunrises. It's just there's something about it. So I did this really purposely so that it looked this way because it makes me happy. It's just That's what it is. It's just a series of lights. And I am a gadget guy. I love technology. With my kids, we build PCs every year. So I love things that glow. So that's why everything glows. And it just gives me a good vibe. If I'm going to be somewhere, and like we spoke about earlier, I've had my home office for a very long time. So I have a stand-up desk. I have what I need at home in order to be able to have the best work experience I can. And I think it's important for your mental health and everything else that goes along with it. So that's what's going on. Edison bulbs and then Hughes lighting that just makes kind of like the dramatic effect.
Very nice.
Now on the stuff that I've been looking at, so I agree, I check Rick and I check what Jenifer said when it comes to the technology. I like things that solve problems, and particularly what I've been seeing a huge, I would say, traction in is really home entertainment solutions, because since, think about home, going to the theater has changed now, that dynamic, and more folks are watching and wanting to have a cinema type experience at home. And if you think about a lot of the launches are now happening at home. So how does one get, without having the space, how do you get the cinema type experience, right? So there are a lot of technologies that are now out that give you 100, 200 inch screens with, having no space at all, just 19 inches from the wall. These ultra short throw projectors. I've seen a lot of traction around that type of technology. Also things that have to do with healthcare. So having a healthy home. So UVC, you're seeing a lot of UVC technology, UVC air purifiers, UVC this and that. And there's also concerns about that because, the wrong exposure or the wrong type is not good for you, right? And then there's the right type. So I've been seeing that. And then talk about something that solves that something. How many of the panelists have tried to have a phone conversation with a mask on? Think about this. It's like, it's like you sound like the Hamburglar, or you sound like the Cookie Monster. So I see a number of companies that have been coming out with masks that have built-in Bluetooth, that have the ability so that you can have conversations. So to me, that you're solving something. Sign me up. If you have that, send it to me, because that's a real problem. You have so many people that lower their mask to have a phone call, and it's like, so then why have the mask? Right? Or masks that allow you to project well. How many times do you try to order something in the drive up and the person doesn't understand you? Like I'm at Chick-fil-A and you have to have a mask on, but the person who's taking the order almost puts their head in the car because they can't hear me. Right? So it's like, this is the...
See, I just got a story idea. I'm going to do mask.
All right.
Hey, this is how it happens.
All right. I just ask guys, reciprocate. Give me some love. Give me some love.
Yeah.
So and then also I look at the health too, because you're seeing more gyms doing Zoom training, and both for the trainers and then the people on the other side. How do you have the right experience, right? I think, and you think about, I'm not talking about the Pelotons of the world because they're a large organization. I'm really talking about the organizations, what keeps this economy going, the small business. So how do you identify and help educate around those tools and technologies that can keep, a small gym owner keep their business going when they can't have people coming to the gym, right? And that kind of technology. So it's kind of like a little bit of everything, but it's healthcare, it's home entertainment, and then also, communications are my area. And I love phones. I love, all those things too.
Awesome. Okay, Anthony, I want to hear what you have to say. Obviously, it's again very different, but I love to hear what are you looking at that you think has been really interesting, and obviously it's a little bit different than like the whole 2021 trends question. But do you have anything that you are looking forward to at CES too?
Okay, so at CES, I really I mean, it's certainly the home entertainment stuff. I agree that just that feeling of, okay, for at least the near future, like I'm going to be trying to watch on Christmas Day Wonder Woman 1984 on my TV in my apartment, and I would love that to be a great experience. So that's probably the biggest one. In general, I would say that I'm a little bit less thematically driven in this. That the stuff that I'm often the most excited about is the stuff that I had no idea was like going to be cool, and then suddenly I see it, and I'm like, oh my god. And I also am, a bit of a generalist, and so we'll end up writing a lot of kind of random stories. That said, so two things that are not, this is in no way comprehensive, but two things that occurred to me that I have been interested in. One that is not, I think, really solved at all yet, but I'm very curious about and worried about is this question of like, what is truth on the internet, and who is the arbiter of truth on the internet? Because I think you're starting to see Facebook and Twitter and YouTube edging towards like being a little bit more willing to say when something is harmful nonsense, but they haven't, no one really wants to be the arbiter of that. I think you're starting to see startups trying to figure out ways, but they often comes down to like crowdsourcing or just showing like both sides. But in a lot of these cases, it's not just showing the two sides, it's that one side is like actively lying. And so I'm very curious to see how that plays out. Another one is, we were talking about small business, and I think that I'm very interested in seeing tools that are helping small business, particularly restaurants, survive. I think time has really made it clear to a lot of us how the business models of Uber Eats, DoorDash, Seamless. I'm not saying these companies are bad companies, but it's very hard for an independent restaurant to survive under those models. And I think there are companies trying to give those restaurants and those business owners more tools, and I'm very interested in that.
Very interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think that's the whole thing is like our small business economy is really been shattered. And I think I could see that, when you go out if you just go out to the store, the grocery store, and we try to eat out, but we're also trying not to go outside. So I don't know. It's a little bit of like a double-edged sword. Thank you guys so much for all your input. I really respect and love watching all of you. So I appreciate your time today and sharing it with the people here and sharing it with people on the interwebs. And have an amazing, amazing holiday. Can you guys just repeat your Twitter handle so that everyone can follow you? And I think they're pretty simple.
Sure. Mine is Rich on Tech on everything. So whatever your social media, Rich on Tech will get you to me.
Awesome.
Jenifer Jolly on Twitter. I think it might be Jenifer Jolly Tech, but best way to get me is jj@techish.com. I too read every email.
Awesome. Milton, I know your stuff is posted all over your page. What is yours?
Yeah, it's EVP Man Reviews. That's it.
Perfect.
Can you say that again? I was trying to, what is it?
It's E as in Edward, B as in Bradley, P as in Paul, Man, M-A-N, Reviews.
Okay, got it.
Rich and I are both going to follow up with you,
Yes, love it.
And I'm at Anthony Ha on Twitter, just my name. Although for some reason I just realized that my Zoom says Anthanaha. I don't know how that typo snuck in there. I'm so embarrassed. But yeah, it's just Anthony, the way it's normally spelled, Anthony.
Thank you guys again so much. Have a fantastic evening and weekend. And we'll see you guys soon. Hopefully we'll have some follow-ups with interesting stories for you guys soon.
Absolutely.
That sounds great.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everybody.
much for having
Happy
me.
weekend.
Great meeting, everybody.